improviser.
And
This is
Yes,
But Why
podcast.
Thank you, Joe Liss, for being on the podcast and taking the time out of your night to chat with me.
Hey, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. I'm very excited about hitting the Out of Bounds Festival.
Oh, absolutely. It's a great festival. It really brings together all of the 5 theaters of Austin to welcome all the other improvisers from all across the country. It's like a big love fest, and I always love to support that crowd. You're located in San Francisco these days. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Well, I live in Oakland, but I do the most of my improvisation in San Francisco.
Oh, how far away is San Francisco from Oakland?
Oh, wow. Well, it's about, it depends with traffic, of course. You know, it could be a half hour or 45 minutes to get into the city. But, you know, if you jump on the BART on rapid transit, you could be in 20 minutes or a half hour.
Oh, I had no idea those places were so close.
Oh, yeah. They're very close.
Yeah. So. Interesting. Wonderful. So you are, we were talking earlier and you mentioned people in technology. I wonder, how does the technological scene of San Francisco come in and intermingle with the improv scene?
Well, that's interesting. There definitely is a lot more tech people taking improv in San Francisco. So you'll get a lot of tech people, and it's funny. You'll get a lot of, Europeans, East Indians, taking the classes. So it's really sort of an international flair sometimes, especially like say a drop-in or even like a regular, like a 6-week class. So people are coming in, and it's very funny too, because like a lot of, your classes are like 3 hours long, and these people have like been working all day, nose to the grindstone, and then they come in for this workshop, and then, by about the second hour, everybody starts looking really sleepy.
I find the more tired you are, the better improv you do, honestly.
Yeah, that's true. It's like that's when you start losing your inhibitions and just say the first thing that comes to your head,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. You're free of all of your the voices in your head that say, "Don't say that." That voice in your head is asleep now. So you're like, "Yeah, whatever." The giraffe's working at the bank, and you're like, "Whoa, where'd that come from?"
Exactly. Yeah. Wow. Hey, let's go with that.
Yeah.
Well, that's funny. So I got my start in Chicago at the Second City. And made my, I went through the improv classes. Before there was a training center, there was at Second City, there was just, you had to find out which company member was teaching a workshop. And this guy, Don DiPolo, used to teach a Thursday workshop. And you just kind of showed up, and he taught a workshop on Thursdays, like from 5 to 8 before the main stage show would start. So it took from him, and then but to get to my point about being tired, once I got to the main stage, we do 6 shows a week, and you would improvise after every show. You do the free improv set. So you do this 2-hour or 2-act sketch show, take suggestions, go backstage, and then think of scenes to improvise and then come out on stage. But then Sunday night would come along, and that was like the end of the week for us, our Sunday night show. And it would be so funny because we would be so beat. But when we did the improv on Sundays, sometimes we would just come up with just some of the most insane, creative stuff that I would venture to guess most of that stuff, a majority of that stuff might have made it into a show, a review. So I just think about that. Fatigue.
Yeah, the total gems coming from fatigue. If only we'd all let it happen.
Yeah, it never fails. And, a lot of times our Sunday night shows would be like a bought house or something. So you might have a bunch of the Kiwanis Club
Right.
is there, and it's an early show, so it's 7:00. So you're not, you've been probably didn't get to bed until 4, so you've been kind of so then by 7, you finish your show, and then 9:00 you're like, all right, you guys, we just got to get this set done, and then all hell can break loose. Somebody thinks of something funny, and it's great. It's just so much fun.
So tell me about Second City. You said that you started there before they even had the official classes that everyone now.
Right. Oh yeah. Before it turned into like this industry. There was a separate improv school. It was called the Players Workshop of the Second City, and that was started by this woman, Joe Forsberg, who had worked with, I think she worked with the Compass Players, with like Sills and Paul and David Shepard, and she worked with Sheldon Patinkin too, who was one of the directors and producers at Second City. And she had a levels class, it was like, I think 1 through 5 levels. And then the last level, you got to do a grad show. So then you got to create sketch. And this was all sketch. So we were learning improv with the mind to going into sketch and writing sketches. So we did. So, and it was great because I think it was your level 5 or your level 6 show was your grad show, and you got to do that on the main stage at Second City. So that was just like a huge, a big thrill for people, when we were taking classes. So that was fun.
Yeah.
And then, and then I found out about, they had just open call auditions where you have to kind of they didn't really broadcast that auditions were going on. So you kind of really had to kind of keep your ear to the sketch world or the improv world when you were in Chicago, and you go, hey, they're auditioning at Second City. You got to go over, drop your headshot off and, get a time, find out when they're doing it. So it was always sort of that you really had to be proactive to kind of get yourself in there. So
was that by design? Did you ever talk to anybody who worked there? Did they do that because they only wanted the people that were proactive? I mean, it would seem to be the hungriest players would be the ones that they'd get. So
yeah, no, that's true. No, I never really didn't talk about it with people because, I do know that from time to time, like Bernie Solins, who was the owner and producer, he would see people in stage shows, like actors, and then he'd go, you need to come and audition for me. So he would he'd have special auditions set up for different actors to come in to audition, Oh. And of course that would be, you have to improvise with the main stage cast, and the main stage cast was like, oh, wait a minute, is this guy going to come and replace me? So, you get some, you would get actors to come in and they were classically trained. And then, a lot of the Second City actors were not classically trained. They did sketch and they did improv. So there was, and so it's there would be some sort of an unhealthy attitude, the atmosphere. So I'm sure that these guys coming in to audition with the cast would not be the best, wouldn't be the best experience for them. So.
No. Weird.
Yeah.
Interesting how that is. I see the idea, though, behind getting the best actors. They're like, well, this person's working and they're really good in this play that I watch, so why don't I just snatch them up?
Yeah.
I feel like I stole that. I do that with my sketch show. I snatched up the good ones. I go to improv graduations and I find the best ones, and I'm like, would you like to be in my show? Woohoo, all right.
That's great. Yeah, because it's here, I'm giving you this opportunity. You're going to come in the sketch. It's an established sketch show. You're going to, and I want you to do it. And I find nothing wrong with that. I mean, actually, Bernie used to, if you couldn't get into Second City and you still want to do sketch, there were plenty of, bar theaters and storefronts to go, hey, let's put on a sketch show. And I know in the 70s, there was a company, they were called the Reification Company. And Bernie went in there. These guys were really funny. And Bernie went in and basically hired almost everybody from the reification company into Second City. So it was like, boom, he like wiped out this sketch show. And those guys put on probably some of the best shows that Second City's ever done. I mean, up to a point, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah, of the time of its era, I guess you'd have to say. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, certainly if you went and you enjoyed it, why not? It was the best, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Like going, man, that guy is really funny. I want him on my stage. And the thing about it is Second City, it was working. You were getting paid. So you were getting paid and you were getting your equity card. So I got my equity card through working at Second City because it's an equity stage. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I never knew that. That's so interesting.
Yeah. That was always my thing. I was like going, it was great because, I mean, when I first got hired, we got hired in the National Touring Company, and that was a paying gig. And I think we got paid $65 a show. And then if we went on the road, we got per diem. So, it was like, wow, we're making money and we're doing what we want to do. Plus you're on the road and, there's something, the mystique about being on the road was just great. It was just, it's like I think everyone needs to go on the road and do a show because, there's just something about it. You're meeting people from different parts of the country and then, you're traveling and, you got to get along with 7 people inside of a van.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow. So you mentioned equity card. That is really interesting.
Yeah.
When you started doing stuff at Second City, were you looking to be an actor or did you know about improv and you were like getting into it? What got you, what's brought you to that place? And are you from Chicago? So many questions.
Oh, well, actually I was born in Chicago, but I was raised in upstate New York. In a small town called Clifton Springs, New York. Yeah. Near Rochester, New York. Yeah.
Right on.
But Chicago was always my vacation growing up because my parents were both from Chicago. And my summer vacation was always Chicago. So there's 7 of us in the family. So we would pack everybody up in the station wagon, drive the 12-hour drive to Chicago, and we would spend a week, with my grandmother. So my 2 grandmothers were still alive. And then there were just tons of aunts and uncles because big Catholic family and comes from Catholic family. So my dad had like 8 brothers and sisters. My mom had like 5. So there were tons of cousins, a lot of visiting. So anyway, as I got older, I found out about Second City. And like when I was in high school, we were in Chicago one year for like Easter break. And I went to Second City show and I'm like going, this is great. So I went back, graduated from high school. I wanted to be an actor, but then I was also like trying to be what's the word? I can't think of the word. Like I wanted to be practical. Sure. So I went to college and got myself a restaurant degree. Uh-huh. So I have associate's degree in food service management, so restaurant management.
So you really want to be an actor?
Yeah, see? So I like going, okay, I said if the acting thing doesn't work, I can fall back on the restaurant biz and, I'm all set. So
I'm so glad the acting worked.
Yeah, me too. And the restaurant is great because I know how to cook. Yay! And I know how to cook and I can, I'm a very good host.
Oh, that's fun. What a good use of your degree. So many people don't get to use theirs. Yeah,
I know it. And it was almost a detriment to me too, because I went to this ag and tech college it's called SUNY Cobleskill, State University of New York at Cobleskill. And I got my 2-year degree. And then I made a beeline to Chicago. And then I was working in a restaurant and I said, I've got to do this Second City improv class. I got to see how I can get into this place. So I looked in the window one day, and there was a phone number for workshops. So I called the phone number up, and they said, yeah, here's the deal. And I think they even sent me the catalog, of classes and stuff. So I signed up and started taking improv lessons.
Oh man, I miss the days of catalogs. Oh,
I know. There was no internet, so it's like you had to do all this shoe leather, as they say in the old film noir, right? You could use some shoe leather to investigate, because you had to investigate everything.
Yeah.
But
so funny.
Yeah, it was great. Uh-huh.
So after you do Second City, you go in the touring program. You're touring with them. You got your equity card.
Yeah, touring company. Yeah, well, actually, the touring company, you start in the touring company because that's you start at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
So we started the touring company. Then I finally made my way into a main stage company. There was two companies at Second City. There's a Second City ETC theater, and there's the main stage theater. And they both put on original reviews, written reviews. So I got into the ETC company. We put a review, and then there was room on the main stage, and then they moved me up to the main stage. So, and then after that, I think I did about four or five reviews, and I was I think I'm ready to move on. So I left Second City. Left Second City. That's funny, though. I left Second City. I kicked around Chicago for another year. Then I wrote a one-man show. Then a director who I'd worked with in Chicago at Second City said, hey, I'm directing the next ETC show. Do you want to do it? And I'm going, yeah, because I really liked working with this guy. His name was Nate Herman. So so then I went back to Second City and did another one more review. So yeah, so you can go back. Don't let people know. You can go back, but got to go back for the right reason, though.
Yeah, why not? I mean, hey, you can do whatever you want. The rules are just other people making stuff up so that you leave the spots open for them.
Exactly. Yes.
Interesting. So what happened after your last ETC tour? Did you perform your one-man show, and did you leave Chicago?
Yeah, eventually left Chicago. I got cast in a musical based on the men's movement. I don't know if you remember the men's movement from the 90s. It was this guy he was like a poet. His name was Robert Bly, and he wrote a book called Iron John. And it was all about this men's movement, right? It was all about men getting in touch with basically their fathers. It's all these, and they would have these basically these outings in the forest where you would go out and, people would invoke their fathers, and they would build teepees and sweat lodges and, talk about relationships. And it was just I don't know how many years it lasted, but it was quite a thing for a while. So these guys that I knew, one of them from Second City, one of them was just a very funny writer, sketch writer. So they got together and they wrote this thing called Wild Men with an exclamation point.
Of course.
And they wrote so it was a musical based on the men's movement. So I got cast in that, and we did that in Chicago, and we did that with George Wendt from Cheers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because George was a Second City guy, too. So George was at Second City in the late 70s, early 80s.
Mm-hmm.
So George was in it, and so we did it at a theater in Chicago, and it was a big hit. And then our producers said, hey, you know what? I want to take this to New York. So we performed in Chicago for about a year, 10 months, and then we took a break, and then we packed up and went to New York and did the show in an off-Broadway theater.
Whoa, for how long?
It was about 3 months. So It was about April, May, June we did the show. So it was, and it was we opened around, it was the last season of Cheers. So there was a lot of hoopla around that, and George came back. So there was a lot of, It was just, yeah, it was great. We were performing at this West Side Theater, which was on, I think, 43rd and 8th. So just off Broadway, of course.
Sure.
And yeah. Oh, and that was great too. Cause it was just great to be living in New York with a job, a theater job.
Yeah.
And, yeah. It was great.
Yeah. And you said this was in the 90s, huh?
Yeah. It was like 93, we did Wild.
So this is just in that. How long did you stay in New York?
So we did, and then we closed. Oh, just the 3 months. I think, yeah, we were there from like April to June. So. Oh,
so you didn't stay in New York after you finished?
No. I went back because I got married. So I got married in 93. So I had to go home. I had to go back to Chicago and get married.
Sure. That's important. If you have a wife, you want to, focus on that.
So then I moved out to LA. So after I got married, we moved to LA to go and get into the rat race that is LA.
Oh, okay. Did your wife also do it, or was she just super supportive of you? So she was like, now we got to go to LA.
Yes, she's both. She's super supportive, and then she kind of recognized we needed to go to LA, or that I needed to go. And she's in advertising, so
great. So
she was able to find an advertising job in LA.
Perfect.
So that was perfect. Right.
Nice.
Yes.
So you're in LA. Nice. You've just done a hit musical off Broadway. Uh-huh. You go to LA and they lay the red carpet for you. How does it go?
Yeah, no, it was like, okay, here, take a number, grab that pick and the shovel, and don't forget one of those helmets with the light on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just went down into the mines and started clanking away. I put my one-man show on because when you go to LA, you want to get yourself a showcase, so casting people can come out and see you, or if you need an agent, agents come out. So I did my one-man show for a few weekends and got a little buzz on that. And then I ended up working on a late night talk show. That was like my first big gig in LA. It was called Good Night America with Mark DiCarlo. I don't know if you remember. Do you remember there was a TV show called Studs?
Maybe.
Yeah, I think I might be dating myself here. But
in 93, I was still in high school, so maybe I wasn't allowed to watch Studs.
It's true, yes, because Studs was basically the dating game, except it was exactly the dating game.
Now that you're describing it, though, I'm starting to feel like maybe I do know it, because I definitely was one of those kids who was like, what? I can't watch it? Let me find out how I can. So.
It was weird, too, because I think it was on Fox. I think it was a Fox show.
Oh.
Fox was that early, the new network then.
Yeah.
Yes, right.
Absolutely. I was one of those kids raised by HBO, so I understand, the new networks when they started to come. I was very much glued to the TV from a young age, and my parents were doing well, and they got cable, and I was the only one of my friends, and I just sat there and watched it all the time.
Oh, listen, you and me both, man. When I was in high school, they finally wired my town up for cable, and we got it. And it was like, wow. It was like when I'm watching all these movies and the HBO, there was standing room only. You saw the young Robin Williams, and then they like old, Jerry Lewis doing stuff. And it was just like, and then we got New York television too.
Oh,
so we got like this Channel 11 from New York City, and they showed the Honeymooners all the time, and they had Benny Hill. It was really bad for my education, because it was like one of those things where you kept putting off homework. another show was on, right?
Yeah, I was one of those kids who just worked stand-up comedy or sketch comedy into my classes. So one of my teachers assigned, I went to a Catholic high school, and one of them assigned we had to do a project on the 10 Commandments, and I turned it into an SNL kind of bit and made my friends act in it and filmed the whole thing and brought it in. And everybody else is like, wait, you have a video? I have this poster. And I'm like, yeah, don't worry about it. It's fine.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. I was just ready to do sketch from immediately. As soon as they told me it was a thing, I was like, wait, I can do that? I'm in.
Oh, yeah. Let's do it. Yeah. Let's put on a show. Did you have a barn? You could have, brought the kids in the neighborhood over.
No, we didn't have a barn, but we had I had a big, I'm not going to say it's a field, but it was like a big patch of land just next to my house. And I think because my parents got that I was clearly a performer from a young age, they put a little concrete block in the middle of it. So it was my stage. So I'd stand on it and film myself, or I'd stand on it and other people would film me. And it was like the little stand-up stage. I'd be like, can you guys believe parents?
That's great. And you were doing it out in the open. Wow.
Oh yeah, sure.
Cool.
I'm not afraid of being in the middle of nowhere talking to no one.
Exactly. Hey, sometimes you come up with your best material when you're talking to no one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm a big fan of television. Tell me what it was like to write for television. What was the system like? How did you? What did it feel like working for Goodnight America? And how did that lead? I went through your bio. It looks like you did a lot of writing. So did Goodnight America lead to more writing gigs? And what's that like?
Well, no, Goodnight America did not lead to more writing gigs. It was wild, man. It was this was just a 6-week show. It was like a summer, replacement show. So, and it was on this network called Partner Stations Network. And I think it was on in 6 cities or something. But it was a strip show, and a strip show means it was 5 nights a week. So we were doing a half-hour show. So it was like a boiler room, we were all jammed, it was really cheap. The show was really cheap. So all the writers were just jammed into one room, and I didn't even have a desk or a computer. So I was basically on a box. We just took an old a napkin and put it over this moving box. And that was kind of like my desk for the time being.
Nice. Until
they started firing. So some writers would get fired, and then it's like, oh, hey, there's room over here. Okay, so I can get So, but it was fun because it was you got to be. It kind of taught you to be quick, quick, and also to have the new choice. It's like, oh, I don't like that joke, or so to have alts to your jokes.
Yeah.
And this show was fun too, because it was basically he had real guests and he had fake guests. So our task was to coming up with fake guests, and then we would go out and cast, there were Second City actors, sketch actors, groundling actors, people would know. And he goes, hey, bring him in for this character. Oh, this guy would be good for this one. So, and then I was being an actor performer, I'm going, hey, I'm going to write a character for myself. So I did. So I got I got 2 characters in, believe it or not. I kept, pushing the executive producer, saying, hey, come on, how about this guy? So I did one character who was he was a Southern guy who had his own food products business, and he had invented this drink called sparkling meat water. Oh. So the character's name was Alfred Burke, and I called the company Van Master Foods because I started selling the product out of a van. And we had a set designer, or a prop mistress, and so she created some bottles and put sparkling meat water on the bottles, and then we opened them up, and then we tasted. I had a pork water or a beef water. And then, they didn't taste like anything. They were just but the other people played along drinking it. So that was a lot of fun.
Oh my God.
To be able to make the abstract concrete, that was a lot of fun. That was a kick.
Yeah, that's so interesting. What an experience for you. Now you say it didn't lead to other jobs. How did you then,
well, I take that back.
After that?
I was still, I had an agent, so I was auditioning for sitcoms and pilots, and I had some, I was on I did some day roles or week, episodes of different sitcoms. There was a show called The Single Guy. I did an episode of that. And but I shouldn't say that this didn't lead to anything, because I did work with these other writers and producers, and they went on to other jobs. And there was a time for Joe Liss to be in a show. They would call me up and say, "Hey, Joe," or my agent would say, "Hey, someone's requesting you for this show. Come and audition." So that definitely helped. I mean, that's the thing about when you get to LA, it's like you don't want to piss anybody off, or you don't want to badmouth anybody, because you never know. You never know when the opportunity is going to show itself, or somebody's like saying, "Hey, you and I work together, and I want you to come and audition for the show, or do you have any writing samples? We want to hire you for this." And so that's the one. That was the one thing about the business. You don't want to. You don't want to piss anybody off, unless you get to a point where you're so successful you don't care what you say.
Though I suppose in this day and age, that rule applies to everyone, no matter what level. Now it's like, be nice, don't be a jerk to people, or else it really could hurt you hardcore.
It really, I know it. Everything is nice. That's it. It's always going to bite you in the butt. It doesn't matter. So, or I used to actually had a waitress that worked for me when I was managing this restaurant in Chicago, and there was one time where this guy left her a really crappy tip, and I'm like, I said, "If you want me to go out and talk to the guy, or do you want?" And she's like, "Oh, no." She goes, "Hey, what comes around goes around." He goes like she's like, he'll get his comeuppance one day. It's far be it from me to, I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's okay philosophy, sure." So, yeah.
Yeah, don't get involved. I like that waitress. She's smart.
Yeah.
So tell me about your next big adventure. What was you got into acting in some day parts on sitcoms, and then you've been writing a little bit more as well. I saw that you were writing for TV.
Oh, yeah. Well, what happened was, when I was doing the Wild Men show, I started working. One of the other guys in the company was a writer. His name was Dave Lumen. And Dave and I were also roommates in New York. So we spent a lot of time together. And when Dave went to New York, he's like, "Oh man, I've got my list. I'm going to check all my boxes, all my touristy stuff I'm going to do." So I would like come along with Dave. I said, "Okay, Dave, where are we going today?" But so we developed a friendship and relationship, and I told him about this idea that I had, because I worked with Chris Farley at Second City.
Oh.
And I said, "Hey, I want to write a screenplay and give it to Chris," because I had a direct line to Chris. I could get a hold of him. And and I knew Chris was a big rugby player when he went to the University of Wisconsin in Madison. So came up with this idea about basically like Chris, getting a ragtag rugby team and turning them into champions. So we wrote that screenplay, and unfortunately, Chris passed away. Chris died. So we were stuck because we had this screenplay that was like specifically written for Chris. So we went through it and kind of took out all of Chris's, idiosyncrasies. And we had friends who had an agent, literary agent, and we gave it to the lit agent, and the lit agents liked it. He liked it, and he said that he would rep us. So we took a few meetings, and then another friend of ours was getting an opportunity to run her own sitcom, and she wanted to hire us. It was this Wayne Knight from Third Rock?
Actor or writer?
Actor. He's also in Seinfeld. He's Newman. Okay. He's Newman from Seinfeld, right? So he was doing double duty. So he was Newman in Seinfeld, and then he was.
I was just talking about Third Rock. Totally. So was he the friend who just got the opportunity that got you into it?
Oh no! Well, Wayne had gotten this opportunity to shoot his own pilot. So, and my friend was going to run it. She was going to be the head writer. So she said, "Hey, do you guys have any?" So when you're in LA, if you want to be a writer, you have to have writing samples. So she asked us if we had, and they're called specs. So she said, "Do you guys have a writing spec of a sitcom?" And we were like going, "No, we got the screenplay that we wrote." But then we said, "But we could write one." And she goes, "Okay." She said, "Write one and then give it to me so I can give it to my bosses." So the two of us, Dave and I, said, "Okay, what are people watching?" And so we picked Everybody Loves Raymond. So we watched a bunch of Everybody Loves Raymond, and then we said, okay, I think we got the voice of the show in our head, and we thought of a few ideas and then came up with this idea for the pilot where, Ray's dad wins a hot tub and doesn't want to put it in his yard and puts the hot tub in Ray's yard. And then the hot tub causes Ray's dad and his wife to rekindle their relationship, their amorous. So we wrote that sitcom and we gave it to our friend, and then she gave it to the producers, and we had a meeting with them and they hired us. So that was great. So that kind of started off our writing partnership.
Awesome.
So we worked on the pilot. The pilot didn't get picked up, but we had a contract with this production company called Carsey Werner, and Carsey Werner also produced Third Rock from the Sun. And so since we had a contract with Carsey Werner, they had to put us on a show. So they put us on as staff writers on Third Rock from the Sun. So we worked. Yeah. So we worked on Third Rock for the last season of it.
Wow.
So it was great. Yeah.
Wow. Interesting. That's so fun. And what a great thing that they still honored the contract. They weren't just like, thanks, see you later. It was like, well, let's give you another job.
Yeah. And it was funny too, because there was another sitcom that got picked up. It was a John Goodman sitcom. I think it was about John Goodman, moving back to his hometown, and I forgot what it was, but we could have gotten put on that show, and that show lasted about maybe 6 weeks, after the fall season. The ratings didn't do very well, so they pulled the plug on it. So we were fortunate to get put on Third Rock and not the John Goodman pilot. So
yeah, I suppose so. You got work for a year at least.
Oh yeah. So that was great.
So we worked on that. From this point, how do you get to San Francisco? How do we fast forward? How do you get to the Moment Improv Theater? What's the short story from this gig to San Francisco?
Short story, my wife.
Huh.
So she was the one who came out with me to LA, and then she got a better job opportunity in San Francisco. And for a while, for a year, she had a studio in San Francisco, and she would fly back on the weekends and work during the week. And then she got tired of that, and she looked at, and we just have one child, one son. She looked at the two of us and she goes, "Hey, you guys, why don't we try it for a year? We all three of us will move to San Francisco." So I'm going, okay, I said, she took the bullet to come to LA. I said, the least I can do is to move to San Francisco for a year. Thinking in my head that my son, who was going into the 8th grade, didn't want to leave his buddies and his friends behind in LA. But of course, he spends 8th grade in the Bay Area, and he's like, "Oh, yeah, you know what? I could go to high school here." So we were stuck. So we put the LA house up for sale, and then bought a house in Oakland, and the rest is history. So I'm in San Francisco, and I'm like going, okay, I got myself an agent. And San Francisco is it's not a big, advertising town. I mean, it's a big advertising town, but if you're going to shoot something, they're always casting out of LA and not San Francisco. So the opportunities are a little smaller, or not. I shouldn't say smaller. They're slimmer.
Yeah.
Fewer and far between. Then I decided, I'm like, I should get back into improv. So I started, I bit the bullet, and I did some drop-in classes. So, I was, side learning. I'm not learning, but I was in these workshops, these drop-in classes with people who'd never taken improv. And so I did that a couple of times through the Leela Arts. Do you know Leela in San Francisco? Her name is Jill Eichmann. She runs Jill and her husband, Christopher Eichmann. They run Leela, which is another improv theater studio. They do levels. And so I met up, hung out with them. I did some Armandos with them, and then sort of I taught a couple of levels for them. And, we used to do Armando on a monthly basis.
Yeah.
And then I met Marcus Sams, and Marcus was also a teacher with Leela. And then one time he and I were doing this Armando together, and we did a really funny duel scene. And then after we did the Armando, he said, "Hey, do you ever think about wanting to do a 2-man improv?" And I'm like, no, but I'm into it. I'll do it. And then so we said, okay, so we did a 2-man improv, and it hit. We hit it off, and then we've been together since.
How many years have you been together?
Liss N Sams. We've been together about, I'm going to say I think we're going on 4 years now.
Great. Awesome.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
That's so nice to find somebody that you can really click with and continue to play with, for sure.
Yes. Well, and then it's also fun to play with new people all the time.
Yeah.
Because because I didn't know a soul up here. I did know. Who did I know? I knew some of the Bats guys, but they were mostly LA Bats guys. So they were like based in LA. So this guy named Steve Kieran, he's a Bats guy. And then they're also part of the, Dan O'Connor. Dan's coming to Austin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll be talking
Dan
to him
O'Connor
next
and
week.
Edie. Yes.
Yeah.
So I met Dan down in LA, and because they do the unscripted, right? They do the Austin unscripted and Twilight Zone unscripted.
Yeah.
Right.
So
yeah,
fun.
oh yeah, and improv. Everybody knows everybody in improv. It's very much a what is that word I want to use? Like inbred. It's an inbred art, isn't it? I shouldn't say inbred. It's just like we all know each other.
I was going to say incestuous, and it's not better. It's not a better word.
Yes, that's the word. That's the word, incestuous.
They're both bad. They're both terrible words.
Oh yeah, they're both bad.
But yeah.
Oh, and listen, all the improv institutions are like that. Second City was an incestuous place. I'm sure Upright Citizens, IO, definitely incestuous. Annoyance, incestuous. Yeah. Believe me, crazy.
Well, it's almost the same thing as you were saying earlier, where it's like you never know who might want to work with you, so be nice to people. If you are developing relationships with people while you're doing improv, you're going to keep using those same people over and over because you vibe well with them. I mean, improv is just trying to make sure that you guys, get along it's trying to get a group to get along. And if you can be cool about getting along, then, then you can do improv together. So it makes sense that there would be sort of like these people are always working with the same people. It's like, yeah, because once you hit it, you're not gonna leave. Once me and this other person can do a great duo and we love each other, like never leave.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true.
Yeah,
but then it's always good to push yourself. Like I think it was like Del Close or something. Of course, everybody. I think it said, it's like, when you want to face, you want to face your fear, or the fear of the unknown is good for improv.
Yeah.
So it's good to go out with new people or try a new form. So I think there's something to be said for that.
Yeah, well, it's bringing it back to the idea that we were talking about earlier, where it's like exhaustion makes for better improv, like fear of the unknown. You're right. I mean, maybe that's the two sides of the coin. One is put yourself out there and do something wild, and the other half is be comfortable and have people that you trust around you. So, yeah, I mean,
Right.
I suppose that's in all of us. We are seeking out something that's a very scary sort of experience, and yet trying to be, calm and cool and collected about it.
Yeah. At least on the outside, right? You'd be cool, calm. On the inside, you're like, what the hell have I gotten myself into?
Unless you're the type of person who's like, gosh, I love this amazing roller coaster. So, you never know.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's true. And never say never. Never say never. It's like going, I'm never going to do that again. Or it's like, especially for an improviser, it's like, it's not always going to be a 60% success rate. Sometimes you are going to tank.
Yeah.
The more, when you start out, I think you tank more when you're starting out. And then as you get more experience, you tank less, you succeed more. But, even it doesn't matter how experienced you are, you're going to have those nights where it's like going, wow, I didn't realize I could sweat on my upper lip. Or you know what? The small of my back is wet. It's like I was doing yard work and I was just out improvising. It's like going, wow.
Yeah, it's so funny. So one final question, because I'm going to have to wrap it up in a second, but tell me, you're coming to do a workshop at Out of Bounds. Tell me about what you're teaching and why this is the thing that you're jazzed about that you want to share with people.
So I'm going to be teaching a workshop on character development, trying to be fully fledged characters and not caricatures. And that's something that's kind of what I love. When I improvise, I love to play characters. I love to get into a character and improvise while I'm in character. So it's something that's really kind of a passion of mine. And I'm thinking that I can impart some of that passion into people for a 3-hour workshop and see if they can come away with kind of instilling that passion. Or I've been thinking about like if people have, because, I don't know if it depends on, who takes the workshop. If they have established characters that they love and maybe they want to like bring their character to the workshop or something, that would be fun. Or I did the workshop at the Alaska Improv Festival, and there were people who I feel like they found characters while we were doing the workshop. And that to me is a success. And I'm like, because this one woman, she found this one character and I said, man, you got to work on that. So I hope she's still working. She's working on it. It was great. She had a really good handle on it.
Yeah.
So
that's wonderful.
The people that take workshops, there are different levels, right?
Yeah.
For the most part,
Yeah.
So we'll see who comes to the workshop and we'll see what happens. But it'll be exciting. It'll be a
I'm very excited that you're coming to Austin. Austin is filled with a lot of hungry improvisers, so I am hoping that the crowd that you get in your workshop will be people that really care deeply about doing something fun, and you guys get to have a wonderful journey together during your workshop.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. Yeah. I'm looking forward to it.
Will you also be performing during the festival as well? Are you performing with Liss N Sams?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I think we're doing two shows. We're doing a Friday night show, and then we're doing a Saturday night show. So we do the Friday night. I think the Friday night's a late one. It's like 10:30. Oh, sure.
No worries.
Sure,
I'll look it all up.
I had it written down.
Oh, okay. You're fine. I'll get all the links and make sure it's all up there. I just wanted to tell the audience how excited they should be to watch this duo with two people that love working with each other. And they get two opportunities. How wonderful.
Two opportunities. So what we do is we get the word of the day. We just ask the audience what the word of the day is, and then we just take off from there.
Wonderful. I'm so glad.
Yeah,
and I'm glad you both
fun.
Get to come together so you get to like hang out and like have a bestie with you so that you're not like bored when in between stuff. You can be like, let's go eat a bunch of weird tacos. Let's go see how many people with a man bun we can see. There's a lot of that.
Hey, let's go and take a look at this theater. I want to maybe do my show here. Let's go look at this other theater. Let's go talk to these guys.
Yeah.
For sure.
If you just look at the out of bounds, like there's a map on the website that says where the locations of all the shows, that's pretty much the main improv theaters in town. That's it. So
cool.
Check it out, and it shows you the there's 5 improv theaters, but there's only 4 spaces. One of the improv schools runs out of the Zach Theater, which is a big old space. That would be a cool spot to bring by.
The Zach.
Yeah.
There's Zach Theater. Is that near the Lawn Center?
Ish. I mean, a little. Yeah, I mean, probably walking distance, certainly. Yeah. There's like Zach Theater, Doherty Art Center, and then the Long Theater and the Palmer Event Center, all right within walking distance from each other. And then most of the rest of the out of bounds venues are separate from that, and they're also fun as well. So yeah, check them all out. Any one of them would be a good spot for you guys. Plus the Paramount downtown, that's another option.
Oh, we have a Paramount in Oakland.
Yeah, there's a lot of theaters in Austin.
Yes. Oh.
It's where like most of the famous stand-ups.
Paramount movie chain.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Yes, exactly. We'll see.
Anyway, thank you so much for taking the time out of your night. I'm sorry about the technical issues we had up top, but thank you for being sweet.
Oh, no problem.
And thank you for spending the time with me. And I look forward to you being in town and everyone getting to experience your joy.
And hopefully we'll get to meet face to face.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to go out and go to all the parties to meet everybody.
Oh, yeah. You come out to the parties. Yes. That sounds good.
All right. Thank you so much, Joe. Have a wonderful evening. And
thanks,
enjoy
Amy.
the rest of your couple weeks until you're here.
Okay. Take care.
Bye. Molly, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me.
Thank you for having me.
Tell me about your start in theater. When did you get involved? Were you doing high school musicals or were you making movies as a 7-year-old? When did the spark first hit you?
So I was not a theater kid, and I actually didn't do any performance that involved speaking until after college. Growing up, I was actually a dancer, and I did that through the end of college, and then stopped, and then didn't do any performance for a couple years after college. And was just like really, I mean, I didn't know what I wanted to do and was like really unsatisfied in my job. And then I signed up for an improv class, which I'd always kind of been thinking about doing. Like I always loved joking around with my friends and like humor was always really important to me. And so I signed up. I was in Boston at the time and signed up for an improv class at Improv Boston and just like loved it immediately. And that was kind of the start of everything.
Oh, awesome. Are you from Boston?
No, I'm not. I moved there kind of randomly after college. I didn't have a job and was just like, I picked Boston. I'm going to Boston and I'll build a life there.
Wow. That's a pretty intense place. I'm from Boston and I left. So.
Oh, you are?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm actually from a suburb outside. And after I graduated from high school, I was like, yeah, Mom, Dad, you guys are great. I'm leaving and never coming back. Have a great time. And I moved to Texas and that was it.
When did you leave Boston?
Let's age myself. The audience knows how old I am. It doesn't matter. I graduated from high school in 1996. So that's when I left and I went to college in Dallas, and graduated in 2000 and started, I guess it's 18 years now. I just saw that a person who was born in 2000 is 18 this year, which blows my mind a little bit. But,
that's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that's when I started my sort of adult life in theater. I never did anything in Boston. So what is improv in Boston like? What was the vibe at Improv Boston when you took classes there?
Yeah, well, there are two main improv theaters in Boston. There's Improv Boston and Improv Asylum. And I strangely have actually to this day, I've never seen a show at Improv Asylum, but I've heard great things. But yeah, I was always at Improv Boston. It was really supportive. I remember everything was such a big deal. I was always a really shy person. And I was always terrified of public speaking and like never spoke in class all through college. Like it was a really big deal to me. And I was so afraid to walk into this Improv 101 class. And it was just like immediately so supportive and also structured in a way where it was like hard for anyone to really be bad at it. Like it was really short. Like I think the first class, like it was just like get to know you games and like little 1-word exercises. And I just remember when I got my first laugh, I was like, okay, not just funny socially. I can be funny in a structured environment.
Yeah, absolutely. You really broke through that fear, huh? Was it just because of the supportive environment that you were able to sort of rise above the fear of speaking in public to actually continue doing it?
Yeah, I think the supportive environment really helped. And like just the early validation moments really helped, like from my classmates, just people being like, I just remember one guy saying to me at the end of the class, like, you stand out. And I was like, and obviously you don't want to have to rely on those things from people and like, take everything with a grain of salt. But like here, I always remembered him saying that, and that like really, I don't know, just those little words along the way just provide a lot of encouragement. I felt validated from the class, and like that, I think that positive like early experience kept me going, and I just loved it.
Yeah, I mean it's a beautiful art form in what can be a yucky world for sure. It's all about like love and support, and the rest of the world is about like competition and fighting for a position. So it can be tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did you continue through Improv Boston until you graduated the program?
Yeah, I did the whole. It was a 6-level program there. At least when I was doing it. I'm not sure if it's changed. So yeah, I did all 6 levels, and then I auditioned. I actually auditioned like while I was still doing the classes, and got on to a house team eventually, and then was on a couple of house teams there for about 1.5 years until I moved to New York.
Awesome. That's so great. When did do you remember what year you graduated the 6-level program?
Oh, good question. 2014, maybe?
Right on.
Yeah, I think it was 2014.
So how about this?
I know
Maybe
I
this will
moved to
be
New York
easier.
in 2015. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my next question. I was like, well, what year did you move to New York? Because clearly it's just before that.
Yes. Yeah, I moved to New York in 2015.
All right. Yeah. Awesome. So you go to Boston because you're like, this is where I'm going to make my life. Where are you originally from?
Right. So I was born in Cleveland, but my family moved when I was 6 to the San Francisco area. So I grew up in California, basically. Yeah.
And then you were like, I'm out of here, going to the other side of the country. Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah, pretty much. I did my freshman year of college at UC Berkeley, and it was too big for me, and I transferred to a small school in upstate New York. And then I've kind of stayed on the East Coast ever since.
Right on. Wow, interesting. So you'd already been to New York a little bit. When you moved to New York City, it wasn't like your first time ever being there.
Right. It's funny because, like, while I lived in Boston, I always was bashing New York City. I was like, with God as my witness, I will never move to New York City. I hate New York City. When I visited it, I hated it. Like, but the thing is, when you visit, you're always, like, in Times Square. Like, you get dropped off at, like, Penn Station or, like, the mega bus stop. And so you're always in the most miserable parts of New York when you're visiting. But, and so I guess I kind of moved here, like, not liking, I don't know. Like, yeah, I guess I came around on New York, like, right around the time I moved here. But yeah, no, I love it living in New York now.
Oh, I mean, they put the hatred of New York City in the water in Boston. So there was nothing you could do.
Yeah.
You were like, go Sox, damn the Yankees. There was nothing you could do. It's like, if you don't say that, you'd be kicked out of every bar in Boston. So you're totally fine. It makes absolute sense that you hated New York.
Right.
That it was bred into you in all of your time in Boston.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like when I personally lived in New York City for a few years, and when I did, I never told people where I was from. Never, ever. They'd be like, oh, really? When did you move here? And I was like, oh, yeah, because I, like, moved after college. So I went to college in Texas. So I'd just pretend I was from Texas.
Do you think it's that strong of a rivalry?
I mean, sort of. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I don't know. I loved it when I was growing up because, like, my uncle, my dad's brother, Joey, moved to New York right after high school to be an actor. And so I was always like, yeah, Joey did it. I'm going to do it. So great. I didn't move to New York right out of high school, but the fact that he went made it so much more palatable. And like I had him there as a family member, like when I went, so it wasn't so crazy. You know what I mean? In the same way that, like, you know, if you have anybody or if you had friends from Improv Boston that had gone, you have like a link, you have a connection of some kind.
Yeah.
Why did you end up moving to New York? Was there a gig? Was there like improv people that were heading that way? Or was it just sort of the natural progression of what you felt like as your career as a performer?
Yeah, it was a little bit of everything. It was, so like you were saying, how your brother was here, my sister was living here, and I also had some friends from Boston who had moved here, and friends from college, and I was just kind of ready. I was ready to leave Boston, and I kind of a few months before I moved, like, really admitted to myself that I wanted to do comedy, and so New York felt like the natural next step.
So when you decided that you were going to pursue this in a sort of career-minded way, what did your family say? Were they supportive? Were they surprised? I mean, sounds like you were a shy kid. How did they react to it? Like, what? This is crazy.
Right. Well, I had been kind of, gradually building over the years in Boston. I made it onto the house teams at Improv Boston, and I also started doing stand-up while I was there.
Oh, fun.
So I've kind of been, like, progressing and doing more. And yeah, my family's super supportive. I distinctly remember the phone call with my sister in Boston while I was still in Boston when I was like, I think I want to be a comedian. And she was like, my sister's a writer. So she was really supportive. And like, just having her like validate the dream was really important to me.
Yeah.
And like really great. And then, my parents are super supportive as well. And like, they're always, sharing my stuff on Facebook, and it's really sweet. So yeah, no, my family is really supportive.
Good. Interesting. Makes me want to ask a question that I'm going to save for later about the shows that you're doing and your parents sharing them on Facebook. But tell me about the beginning of your New York. When you got to New York City, you were, it was 2015. And what did you do? Did you like head straight to UCB, or did you try to do your own thing? What was your path when you got there?
Yeah, I headed straight for UCB, actually. I like before I moved, I signed up for Improv 101 at UCB, and like I knew I was going to miss the first class because I wouldn't have moved here yet, and I was like, you can miss two. Like, I'm just going to do it. So I signed up. I like straight away went into Improv 101 and started doing the curriculum there. And like my first year, I did the whole improv curriculum and the whole sketch curriculum. And then I also did the character curriculum. I guess that was over like a year and a half. Wow. A bunch of UCB classes. And I was also like still doing stand-up and went to some open mics throughout that first year. But like the first year was tough. Like it's a transitional year. And I think I realized like I still didn't really know what being a comedian meant to me and like what I really wanted to be doing. And and the open mics were really tough because I just like didn't really know what I wanted to write about yet, and like wasn't writing good material. And I mean, as many people are when they're first starting out in stand up. But I eventually stopped doing stand up. I now do it again, but I stopped at the time. But yeah, the first year, I mean, I took a ton of classes that first year. I spent a lot of money. It was also, this is a weird thing, but like I had this thing on my eyelid really bad. I got a giant sty the day that I decided to move to New York. And it didn't go away. It like turned into this chronic issue. And my first year, I had this like huge red thing on my eyelid, and like I was like, I can't go out for acting gigs. Like I have a thing on my face. And so it was just like, I forget about this sometimes, but like, that's part of what made the first year so hard was that like, I had this big thing on my face, and like I was going to doctors all the time, like doctors couldn't figure it out, like it was really expensive. So that kind of made the transition harder than it would have been. Yeah,
that's so sad. I'm so sorry. I'm glad you've kind of blocked it out.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, sometimes I forget like that was the year of my sty. And it still hasn't gone away fully, but it's like significantly reduced.
Huh. If you don't mind me asking, did you ever get a doctor to like figure it out, or did it just sort of like lessen on its own?
Well, I saw many doctors and had many procedures and injections and all sorts of things. And they were like, I got to the point where they were like, yeah, you've tried everything. We're out of stuff. So now just wait and hope it goes away. And I guess that happens sometimes with these things, is like, you do all the things, and then like, you just have to live with it and like wait and see.
Huh. Fascinating. How has this, since this is something that you have going on, how does that affect the way that you perform? Like, does it affect the kind of things that you write for yourself? Because, you know, I hear what you're saying when you say, like, how was I ever going to go out for acting gigs when I've got this issue? So, like, how did you resolve that?
I think the thing is that, like, I use it as an excuse. Like, I think that I could have gone out for acting gigs and, like, I felt like I couldn't. And also it's the type, I mean, it's hard to remember what it, like, really looked like. And I don't think I took that many photos of myself that whole year. But, sure, like, it always, you know, it always looks worse to you than it does to everyone else. But I think like, it didn't have to prevent me from doing anything, but, like, I was still, I think, struggling with confidence that year a lot. And also uncertainty about, or just, like, I still needed to be, like, experimenting and figuring out what I wanted to do. And I, like, couldn't accept that. I was like, why don't I know, like, exactly what projects I want to be working on? And I didn't. And so, it was a transitional time.
Interesting. Part of me wonders if, like, your experience, like, if it was, I don't know, sort of cosmically part of the world being like, are you ready to be a performer all the time? Are you, you know, because, like, it's a hard path, like, and it's interesting that there would be, like, this physical manifestation of, it's almost like a fairy tale in a way, where it's like they wanted to see how hard she would work, so they put this thing, you know, and it's like, because, like, I went to a college that was, like, all about Greek myths. Like, the college, they taught us, like, it was all about mythology and stuff like that. And so all the old myths I always think of when I'm writing stories. I'm like, okay, what's a story that's super old that I could, like, put into today, you know? And sometimes there are a lot of Greek mythology that deals with somebody who's like, they wanted to accomplish X, so the gods put a rock on his back and said, good luck to you, buddy. And that guy figured it out, you know? So it's like, oh man, this is like, you know, they put this cross on your back and say, head walk and figure it out, get there. Like, so fascinating.
I love that. I love that take on it, because I have thought about that as well. Or, like, you know, kind of like, what do I take from this thing? It's called a Chilesian. And I'm like, why was my Chilesian given to me? Like, why did this happen? And one of my theories is that, so I'm, like, a huge perfectionist, and that actually is, like, often, you know, why I procrastinate on stuff. And I think, like, I think, like, perfectionism was, like, a big thing that was going on for me that first year in New York, when I, like, was taking a lot of classes, but wasn't, like, doing a lot. Like, I wasn't, like, creating a lot and, like, putting myself out there as a creator. And I think that, like, the Chilesian was given to me, or part of me thinks that the Chilesian was given to me to, like, show me that, like, not everything can be perfect. Like, I have this thing on my face forever, and, like, it's probably, like, maybe it'll go away, maybe it won't, but, like, my eyelids do not look the same anymore, and, like, my face isn't as symmetrical as it used to be, and there's, like, a little red spot there. Like, things just are not perfect. So that's one of my theories, but I agree with you. I'm like, is there some sort of, like, mythical, and also just the fact that I got it the day I decided to move to New York.
Yeah, like, that's so intense. Like it's so like directly related in a way that's like, oh, whoa. Like the gods were like, let's see if Molly can do it, you know.
Yeah.
Wild. Man. Well, I mean, it seems like, especially given, correct me if I'm wrong, your one-woman show that you're performing at the festival is called Molly Is Not Coming, and it's about orgasms, correct?
Correct. It's called Molly Brenner is not coming, but yeah.
Molly Brenner is not
correct.
Coming. Yeah. And so you clearly have gotten past this, like, I could be afraid of talking about myself and revealing, you know, I'm not going to say darker parts, but it's like the more like most people are afraid to talk about this, but you're not. And I wonder if part of it was like, well, you've had to have conversations about this thing that was affecting your eye with probably strangers constantly. So then you're like, you know what? If I can talk about this, I'll tell you anything. What do you got? Ask me anything. Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
I don't mean to focus all this time on it. I'm just like fascinated by this as an idea. And I personally, like, I just think that we're all in our own like fairy tale story. And like, for me, whenever I have a hard time, I try to think like Cinderella had to clean a bunch before anything happened for her. So keep cleaning because, you know, the ball and the fairy godmother are on their way, or not exactly, you know what I mean? But like something like that.
Yeah. I love that. I relate to that. Yeah, the show was definitely like the turning point for me in terms of like figuring out what I wanted to be creating and also like putting myself out there in a much bigger way. Because I like while I was doing, you know, open mics my first year in New York, I always, like I said, I wasn't writing material that I was really excited about. And the whole time I was like, I kind of want to write about the fact that I've never had an orgasm. But I mean, like I said, everything was such a big deal to me. Like signing up for my first improv class was a huge deal to me. Like going to my first open mic was like, I almost vomited. And like the idea of writing about this orgasm stuff and bringing it to open mics was just too much for me. I was like, it's too personal. I can't bomb with this personal material. But then for some reason, like it was less scary to me to write a whole show about it. And I think I was, you know, at the time I chose to write the show, I was in a kind of, you know, I was in a different place and had progressed more.
So what got you to write the show? Tell me about the creative process. You say you were scared. You had these ideas. You were like, this could be a story that people could relate to, but what got you over the hump of being nervous about it to making it happen?
Yeah, it was actually like this one weekend, almost exactly a year ago now. I had this one weekend with no plans. Like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I had no plans. Very popular person. And also my roommates were gone. Like I was just alone for this whole weekend. And I had just gotten rejected from something, or I had just gotten rejected from a few things. And I was so frustrated, and I was just like, I feel like I have nothing to show for myself, like, which wasn't true, but I felt that way at the time. And I was like, I just am so frustrated. And I just had this moment of like, because also like leading up to that point, which was either maybe 2 years in New York at that point. Yeah, 2 years in New York at that point. Like every weekend I would go to coffee shops and like sit down with the intent of like creating comedy. And I would just like make a list of all my goals. And then I'd be like so exhausted from making the list that I like wouldn't create any comedy. and then the cycle would repeat over and over again. And I was like, and so anyway, I had this one weekend with no plans, and I had this moment of frustration. And I was like, I am going to do something. Like, I'm not going to make any more lists. Like, I'm going to do something. And I just like initiated all these projects, including the solo show, like in this flurry of like 30 minutes. And I also like initiated my web series that I also created over this past year, and like a couple other smaller things. But like that was when it all started. I don't know. I just had this like moment.
You just had enough. That was it. You're not going to let anybody keep you down anymore. Time to do it.
Yeah.
Man, so great.
Yeah, and it was well timed too, because this like solo show festival called SoloCom was coming up in a couple months, and so I ended up submitting for that and getting into that festival, and then I had to create the show.
Yeah, a deadline helps. A deadline helps.
Yeah. I'm big on that. It's like, book the show, and then you will create the show.
Do you know Kids in the Hall at all?
I do, but I'm embarrassed to say I've never seen any of their work.
No worries. I will send you a link, because there is a famous sketch by them, and it's about a to-do list. And this guy becomes consumed with his to-do list. And so when you talked about making lists and how you were like, I'm not going to make lists anymore, I was like, oh yeah, this is just like that. I'll send you a link to the video. It's a fun moment. It's like, clearly all of us go through this because they wrote one.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many notebooks I have filled with lists. So I totally get what you're saying.
Need to watch that. That's when I know I'm in a creative rut. Yeah, when I'm in a creative rut, it's like I'm making lists. Like, and I'm like, at this point, I've grown to recognize it, and I'm like, okay, stop making lists. Like, you're in a rut. Just go do something else.
Yeah. Wow. That's even more wonderful that you're like smart enough to be like, oh no, I've just made a list. Do something creative. Stop it.
Well, it's like lists are okay, but I know that when I know it's a rut, it's when I'm like making list after list after list and not doing any of the things.
Yeah, I hear ya. Oh man, I just realized how many lists I made today. Okay, all right. I'm glad we talked about this. I'm feeling like renewed. I will be writing only sketch outlines and not lists. That's not a list. It's an outline.
Well, your list. I'm sure your lists are great.
You're so nice. So tell me about the web series that was also born at this time. You said that during this moment of, rejection, you were like, forget about it. I'm doing this. You wrote the one-woman show, and then you also started developing this web series. Tell me about the web series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it is called Human Resources, and it's about a human resources manager who writes porn on the side, but she very specifically writes just the beginnings of porn, so like just the pre-sex part.
Uh-huh. That's real.
Which is like her loophole for like, if she gets found out at work, she can be like, well, I don't write the sex part.
I wonder if anyone writes the sex part. Like legitimately,
I know, like
in real life.
Something to write.
Is it like, because like you've seen like
it out.
Yeah, is it like a shot list? You know what I mean?
It must be a shot list, yeah.
Oh my God, it's so terrible. I really want to see a porn script now, like a fully written out to be filmed. I know it's so disgusting for me to like want to look at this, but I so want to see what it looks like now. Because I'm like, yeah, you're right. What other script is there?
Yeah, it's funny because like I wrote this whole web series about this, but I'm like, I've never had this thought that I'm having right now, which is like, yeah, I really want to see like what the shot list looks like.
Right. And like how business is the event?
Yeah. Yeah. Is it like somebody just writes it on an iPhone note, or is it like a Hollywood script?
Yeah. Yeah, they get like their sides for the day. Like, it's like, these are the pages. They're like sitting in like captain's chairs with like, in a robe reading it, going like, I don't know if my character would say this line. Oh boy.
I know.
That's so fascinating. So tell me about how the web series went. Like, how was the filming of it? How was releasing it? Are there multiple seasons coming up? How does it go? How did it go for you?
Yeah, it was really fun. It's funny. Like, I had these two projects kind of going concurrently, like over the year, and like the solo show was like, it's just me. It's a solo show. I worked with the director on it, but like it's a very solitary project. And then the web series is like very much the opposite of that, where it's like a lot of people involved, like like actors, location, like all these things. But like they're very different projects. And also, obviously, one is a live show and one is a video project. Yeah, the web series was really fun, and like I had a release party for it, and like I was working on it with like the team that worked on it for about 8 months, and the whole time, like you never hear any laughter. I mean, on set, like people will laugh, but otherwise, like you're working on scripts, you're watching cuts, like you are so like isolated from audience reaction to it. And when I finally had this release party, I was like, oh my God, is this funny? And just to hear it, like the moment, like the first laugh happened, I was like, oh, thank God it is. Like, but it's it's so different from the solo show where like all of the workshopping process was in front of audiences. And like, this was like, it wasn't in front of an audience until it was done.
Did you write the web series all entirely yourself, or did you do it with like a writer's room situation?
I wrote it, but like I worked with an incredible woman named Sarah Smallwood Parsons, who was kind of like a script coach for it, and then also directed it and edited it. So we had kind of like a back and forth situation. And then I also had a table read with some friends to get some feedback kind of in the middle of the process.
Awesome. That's super great. So have you been writing, are there many seasons of Human Resources, or was it just one season and now you're working on a new project?
There was one season. So there's 4 episodes, one season. I don't have plans right now to write another season, but if I get inspired, I will.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet you the Workaholics guys weren't really planning on writing any more of those sketches either until they got picked up by Comedy Central. And then they're like, oh, cool, we'll play them for another 6 years. No problem.
Right. Guess we'll write some more episodes.
Yeah, I guess I'm still 25, they say. And it's like, who are these guys? These characters seem a little older. No, it's fine. It's fine. Everybody has to have a job. Yeah, you never know.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? How funny. So you've spent most of so after you did Human Resources, you've just been focused on producing the one-woman show, and have you brought that to multiple festivals?
Yeah, so I have brought it, so it kind of premiered at SoloCom Festival, and then I performed in a couple different venues around New York. I just did a short run at a theater called the Tank Theater in New York, and that was really fun. And now I'm bringing it to Out of Bounds, and then I'll be looking at bringing it to some other cities. I'll probably be doing it in New York again, and then kind of I'm working on submitting to some more festivals and putting together kind of a little tour going to some other cities.
Yeah, it seems like something that sort of would be great to tour with. Have you had feedback from audiences with relation to the topic? Like, have people come up to you after and been like, thank God you're talking about this because nobody ever does?
Yeah, a lot of people come up to me with a lot of different reactions. And yeah, it really brings out, kind of frank and open discussion from people, which I have really enjoyed. And also, like, it's not really just about orgasms. It's kind of like a walk through my sexuality, like chronological, like a walk through my sex life chronologically, kind of starting in childhood, like learning about sex through, adulthood, and also kind of touches on my experience having something called vaginismus, which I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's like when your body, the way I describe it is like, it's when your body is like afraid of penetration, like your vagina just won't let anything in. And I have since, dealt with that and like feel pretty, past it, but like that's another big element in the show. And I've definitely had a lot of people come up to me afterward and been like, thank you for writing about this and sharing. And that actually was probably the part that I was most like nervous to share, leading up to the first showing of the show. Cause I was like, is this weird? Like, is this gross? Is this too personal? But it's like, yeah, it's been really therapeutic to talk about that.
Yeah. Plus, I feel like there's so many, like, there's been a lot of discussion in the last few years about different kinds of sexuality and sort of the various different levels of it. And, like because now there are sort of names for different kinds of things, but the naming is really just people coming out to say, I feel like this. Are there other people that feel like this? So I feel like it is brave of you to put yourself out there, but like so great for the other people who like could never find that bravery, so they can listen to you and say like, I'm so glad there's another person. Like I didn't know, that there were other people that experienced this, that felt this way. I thought there was something wrong with me. And it's much better to know that there are multiple people out there, because then you're like, don't feel so alone. So it's good that you put yourself out there for everybody else, because then, your audience can really, experience it and feel like they're not as alone as they did before.
Yeah, that's like always one of my hopes. It's always my hope whenever I perform the show. Like, it's always been one of my biggest hopes in writing the show. And like, it started from a place of like, making this show has been like definitely the strongest pull I've ever had to write about something and to make something. I was actually originally going to call it Molly Brenner Has Never Had an Orgasm. Like, that's how it like first came to me. I was like, I have to write a show called Molly Brenner Has Never Had an Orgasm. And I should massage the title a little bit. But I was so called to write it. And like, I just like the experience of writing it was so therapeutic for me. And then once I wrote it, I was like, wait, I need to like meet other people who can relate through the show. And I hope that like women come up to me after the show and talk to me about this stuff, and that I like am able to build community through it. But yeah, it was also like just personally very therapeutic.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned earlier that when you first moved to New York City, you were in a bit of a rut about like not being sure how you wanted to express yourself and what you had to say as an artist. And then just now you've said that you felt very strongly pulled to tell this story. Do you think that you're going to continue to sort of write write stuff about different kinds of sexuality, or are you trying to appeal to women, or what was it about telling this story, aside from the personal catharsis, that led you to put this on stage and share it with other people?
Yeah, I think definitely I will keep writing about sex and making comedy about sex. That's just a topic that, like, that's how I've really found myself as a comedian, I feel like. And like, I really found that I really like talking about sex and writing about sex and laughing about sex. And I don't know if that'll be always true, but it's definitely true now. And, you know, my stand-up material is also almost entirely about sex. So, yeah, I guess I'm not great to book on a family show, but what was I saying? Yeah, I really like writing personal, vulnerable material that people can hopefully relate to, but like, you know, I like sharing my experiences and then kind of seeing how people connect to it. And I really like, that's just like, I really like looking inward for my comedic material. I'm not so much an observational comic, or like, I don't do a lot of political comedy, I guess. I really kind of like drawing on my own experiences and stories and anxieties and like the things that I think about and the things that stress me out. And that's really where I get inspired.
Yeah. Do you feel like have you sort of fulfilled what the Molly of 2015 who first moved to New York City, do you think you fulfilled her goals as far as like accomplishing, getting yourself, well educated in the improv world and having experiences to as a writer? Like, did you fulfill her goal and you have future goals?
Yes, I think, like I was saying, I'm a big perfectionist. And so I'm always like, I always have to kind of catch myself being like, why haven't I done blah, blah, blah? Like, why haven't I achieved blah, blah, blah? Because I am really proud of what I've done, over these past few years. And like, I'm really proud of how far I've come and what I've created. I definitely have many goals for the future, but I'm excited about what's to come. And yeah, I like looking back, this conversation made me really like remember my first year in New York and how kind of lost and frustrated I was, and how like disappointed in myself I was as a comedian. And I think I've really come very far from that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even just that you telling me about how afraid you were to do your first improv Boston class, like what an insane transition to go from I'm nervous to take improv 101 to I'm going to be writing a one-woman show about my sexual experiences. Like that, those two couldn't be farther apart, right? You really made a huge jump as a performer, as a person, you know what I mean? And yeah, I mean, wow, so amazing. Like, because of what I read, I did a little bit of research before I called you about the show and stuff like that. And when you were like, yeah, I was nervous, I was like, man, you were nervous? Huh? Okay, now I need to know everything, because it does not seem like you'd be a nervous person, but I love it. I think it's so great.
Yeah. No, I'm always like very, I'm working on this. I'm always like really nervous and stressed out about whatever I do, but I still do it. Like, I think that's like what's changed about me is like, I'll I'll still do it. I'll just be really nervous. But like, it gets better with time. And yeah, I'm big on like book the show and then you've got to do the show.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely the key. A deadline helps everything. Yeah. It helps you finish writing stuff. It helps you get ready. And then, when the show's there, you're doing it. Whatever you're doing, it's the show.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, that's so great. And what are you working on right now? Are you writing anything new? Is there any, you don't have to give away any, secrets in the coffers of the secret writings of Molly Brenner or anything, but, are there any like new topics that you've started to work on or, is there anything else that you're thinking about for creatively right now?
Yeah, I'm actually extending my show to an hour. So it's currently a half-hour show, and I'm developing it into an hour. So that's a big focus right now. I'm working on a pilot script. And stand-up, I'm performing stand-up around New York City and always kind of writing new material for that as well.
May I ask, do you do acting? Like, do you act in other people's stuff? Are you acting in plays? Do you have like an acting agent or anything like that? Is there any path in that way for you?
Yeah, I do acting, and I actually act in a monthly sketch show at the Pit called Boogie Manja. So I'm on a sketch team for that, and that's really fun. And then I act in sketch videos, comedy videos. I haven't focused on it so much just because, like, my biggest passion is writing and then writing my own material and then acting in that. So like kind of creating, like working on both sides of it.
Sure.
But yeah, I do acting as well.
Yeah, doing your own stuff, writing and producing your own stuff is definitely the key these days for sure to like getting yourself out there and doing the work that you really want to do because you can't really wait for somebody else to give it to you. But I wondered since you were a part of kind of a rich community of creativity, both at UCB and I'm sure in the other writing avenues that you're working in New York, like I wondered if maybe you were doing other people's web series, helping them out with theirs, or are you just mostly focusing on creating your own stuff and writing? Is writing your major love?
Yeah, that's such a tough question. I was thinking about that recently. Like, I really love both writing and performing. I love the like more instant gratification of performing. Sure. But I also love writing and, I love creating. Like I love writing and then performing it. That's like my biggest passion. I also still do a fair amount of improv too. I still love improv.
Oh, cool. Are you on any troupes or anything like that perform regularly?
I'm on an independent team called Physically Bold that we perform at UCB sometimes. We did cage match last year. It was really fun.
Nice. Hey, you mentioned the monthly sketch show at the Pit. What was the name of that again?
It's called Boogie Manja.
Boogie Manja?
Yeah, it's been running for several years now, and it's actually a weekly show, and then I'm on a team that performs the first Friday of every month. My team's called Back Room.
And you're like a sketch troupe that performs as part of the show, or are you like the improv opener?
It's a sketch group, yeah. So it's a weekly sketch show, and there are two teams that perform every week, and each does a 30-minute sketch show. So all new sketches every month, and I'm an actor on it.
Nice. That must be so fun. Do you write and perform in it, or you just perform in it?
I just perform in that one. Yeah. So you can't do both. So I'm just an actor.
Oh, that must be freeing. You're like, great, give me the script. I'll do it.
Yeah. It's so fun. Yeah.
Yeah. But that being said, despite the fact that it's like, oh, great, I get to do somebody else's work. I can take a little break. It sounds to me like your creative juices are fulfilled when you're doing all of the parts.
Yeah. I love comedy. I love improvising. I love acting in sketches. I love making videos. I love writing. I love pretty much every form of comedy. But yeah, my biggest focus is writing and performing my own material. Yeah.
No, that's super great. That's so exciting. And I'm so glad that you seem to have a nice community around you of friends and fellow performers and writers who are, supporting the work that you're doing and helping you develop it and make it the best it can be.
Yeah, I'm really amazed by all the great people I've met in New York. And really, obviously, it's a huge community and lots of different people are in it. But I've been amazed by how many great supporters, how supportive of everyone. I'm saying this so badly. I feel like I've met a lot of really supportive comedians in the New York comedy community and people who really want to help their peers succeed. That's been really refreshing and really great.
That's so wonderful. It seems like you've had a great, supportive experience all the way through, from your Improv Boston classes through to your UCB classes and now in your postgraduate creations.
Yeah, I think I've been fortunate. Obviously, and everyone has a different experience. And part of why I stopped doing stand-up that first year was the open mics were so brutal, and just so bad. And, since starting it up again, I've kind of found the better, pockets within stand-up in New York that I enjoy a lot more. But yeah, I was going to some pretty rough ones for a while there.
Well, you got to remember, they're developing a different kind of skill. They're developing a different kind of thing. If any of those people are actually planning on doing stand-up long-term, there's a lot of abuse coming everywhere. So sometimes the rooms are rough because it's if this is your road, it's a tough road. You ready? You know what I mean? It's what is it? It's some boot camps, gyms. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
What are those ones that they're in every city? It's like they make you run 3 miles as soon as you arrive. CrossFit. That's it. Yeah, it's they make it tough because they're well, what we want you to do is deal with this tough, it's tough to do, so it's going to be tough. Same with stand-up. I also found negativity in stand-up rooms, but it was because they're trying to develop a skill I wasn't looking to develop. I was oh yeah, no, I don't want to do that. That's how I got into improv too, because I was where are the nice people? And they're ugh, go to improv. Yeah. And I was okay.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if the culture around stand-up is changing a little bit in that way. I'm not sure, but
I don't know.
Yeah,
it's hard to know.
Yeah, it's hard to know.
Because, for instance, you're talking about how you're developing, the ability to know how to, write, produce, perform all your own stuff. And I think that skill set is totally what it takes to become a comedian for the long term in a certain sense, right? There's the stand-up sense, which is I'm alone with a microphone telling you stories, but it's a different kind of setup than what you're trying to develop. And so, the environments have to be different. The creative incubators have to be different to create different end results. But I don't know. I mean, Lord knows, I'm just glad to hear that you've had positive experiences and that, you're it seems like it's a weird world for a young girl to be able to talk about sex and it not be a problem for you or for you to receive any level of like, feminist or anti-feminist backlash. So the fact that you, that you've just received so much support and that what you're saying is actually helping your community. I mean, that's just really beautiful. Just really nice.
Yeah. Now, listening to you say that, I'm like, oh, I wonder if I'll ever get backlash for the show. I have definitely not gotten any backlash thus far.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, hopefully that will stay true.
Yeah.
I've had people come up to me after the show and be like, wow, that was a lot to share. People were just like surprised by how personal it is, but luckily no backlash.
Yeah. I mean, Lord knows. I mean, haters are going to hate. People just dislike things just to dislike. It's like a thing you can do now. Like being a hater is like an activity, I guess. But, it's nice that you've been doing this for like 2 years and you haven't received any negative feedback. I was totally going to ask, but, the way you told the story, there just didn't seem to be any negativity. But, I mean, I guess since I brought it up, my only concern was that, people would give you trouble for, I don't know, talking about sex. People are prudes sometimes, especially when it's like not like I got married and had missionary sex and then there was a baby. Like it's just like, okay, great. Like what about the rest of the world?
Yeah.
What about like if I'm the kind of person who's weird about sex? Are there other people like me? Are there, maybe it's like I always appreciate, I have a very vanilla sex life myself, but I always appreciate that there are people out there that can do other stuff. I'm like, hey, get in that bunny costume and do it up if you want to. Have a good time. You like leather? I think it's a little warm for me, but you get in there and have a fun time with yourself. Why not? Right? But, I'm also slightly more progressive. And thankfully, one of the wonderful things is when you come to Austin, the Austin audience will be very progressive.
That's what I've heard. Yeah, this will be my first time in Austin.
Oh, wow. It's a magical playland of hippies and tacos. You're going to love it. It really is. I mean, it is like...
I've heard... Yeah. I've heard nothing but good things. I'm so excited.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't spend too much time here. You'll never leave. It's wonderful in a way that is, crazy. Yeah, there's 5 improv theaters in town and twice as many venues for other kinds of theater, plays, musicals, stuff like that. And it is just a fun, wonderful town. You'll probably get hugs and people coming after you after your show, thanking you for sharing that. Everybody's very sweet. So, yeah, I hope you have a wonderful time. The crowd here is primed and excited to see you.
Oh, I was just picturing like all of Austin greeting me when I get off the plane, but I think that's not going to be a reality. No, I'm so excited.
I mean, it's a tiny, honestly, you'll come in. It's more hot than you can imagine, just so you're aware. Like, don't bring any long sleeves of any kind. It's not, you don't need them ever. It's 100 degrees at midnight.
So I just had, oh my God. Yeah, I just had a really serendipitous moment this week. I was doing stand-up on a show earlier this week, and these 3 women were in the audience, and I was talking to them after the show and mentioned that I was going to Austin for this festival, and they were like, oh, we're from Austin. And so they were giving me all their recommendations, and they said it will be blazing hot, but that it's a dry heat.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll be okay. But it's definitely not something you'll expect. People will be big smiles and you're like, oh, they're so happy. How are they happy? It's so warm. But it's okay. It's okay. I think that's why everyone stays positive, is because it's like, no, it's nice. The sun's shining. There's at least 400 people making breakfast tacos right now. Like, it's a good time. Like, yeah, it's just lovely. And Out of Bounds is one of the best festivals. It brings together all of the sweetness and the kindness that is Austin Improv and Austin Sketch, and all the comedians come together and they've done it for years. And the people that run the festival are like the bedrock of Austin Improv, and I'm just very excited that you get to come and be here, and that I'm just happy too that I got to talk to you, especially so much about your show, because I really, I'm going to spread the word and tell everyone you got to go see this show. Molly Brenner is not coming. I swear that's the name of the show. It's not telling you she's not here. I actually I was going through the press release and I was like, wait, this is about who is coming. Why does this one say she's not coming? So it's kind of a hilarious name for a festival show, actually. So I think you should try to get it in every festival you can, because it's a hilarious name that really sticks out. You're like, wait, what's this? And then you have to read about it because you're like, wait, I'm confused. And you're like, oh, okay, cool. Even before Ruby connected us, I had looked up your show because I was like, oh, this girl's not coming. And then I read it and I was like, oh, no, that's the name of the show. Okay, cool. I thought it was just a public cancellation. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, now that you say that, I'm like, maybe I need to reach out and clarify, like, this show is happening.
It's okay. Just a few. You can just put a few Facebook posts before the event and stuff. Like, this show is actually happening for sure. Yeah.
Show is still on.
I'll make sure to write that this show is definitely happening.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yes. So, how many shows are you just performing the show once when you're in town?
No, I have 2 performances. So, one is on Friday, August 31st at 7 p.m. And then the other one is Saturday, September 1st at 7 p.m. And they're both at the Hideout Theater. Awesome. That is the center of downtown. You'll be in a perfect place. It is a wonderful venue. You will love everyone. There is a wonderful coffee shop in the downstairs, and then there are multiple theaters in that space. One of the best in town. You will love it. Oh. Yeah. Molly, thank you so much for chatting with me tonight. Thank you for taking the time out and being so sweet to me about my technological issues. Like I said, I am horrible with technology, so no one understands better than me. Well, listen. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, absolutely. I'm inspired by your, all of the stuff you're talking about, all the writing that you're doing and developing this. I wrote down personal, vulnerable material, and I circled it 3 times because I'm like, yeah. She's inspired. You've inspired me. I got to write stuff. Aww. Sometimes I'm like, what is it? You got to write stuff. Yeah, no, I mean, because I've done, like you were talking about, the idea of like writing about stuff outside of you. That's what some people do, but you like writing about yourself. And I always think I'm boring. Like, I'm like, who cares about me? My life is plain. But maybe it isn't, like maybe my experience could touch people. And I've been inspired by you to try that in some of my next projects. So I appreciate it. Yeah. No, you're not boring. Yeah. Sometimes I'll just like sit down and just like do a brainstorm around like, what do I think about a lot? Or like, how does my brain work? And that kind of gets me going. Well, like I heard an interview with Bo Burnham. You know how he recently released the movie 8th Grade? He said that he got inspired to write it because he was like, when he first started going on tour and performing his style of comedy, the people that were his biggest fans were these like young girls, and they would just come up to him afterwards and be like, I totally get everything that you're saying. And he was like, why? How do you, I don't understand. And he said that he felt like he was rejecting the connection between them. And then he was like, no, this is my audience. This is who likes me. I need to figure
figure out, embrace this and figure out like why they associate with me, and his connection to what they felt and what he was feeling inspired him to write the screenplay. And I was just like, what a fascinating journey to be inspired by your audience. Like, you're just trying to do something. You're just throwing stuff against the wall, trying to write some comedy, do what you need to. And your audience turns out to be a crowd that you didn't expect. And you're like, okay, why do you like me? And I just thought it was so interesting that it's like, we get inspiration from so many different places. It is so interesting to say, like, who would understand my life? Who would connect with me? And even just hearing that interview with him, I was like, yeah, it's so fascinating. Like, the audience that ends up being your audience, the people that you are helping. I mean, I think about the people that watch your show and the people who have never had a voice to their, sexual issues. And they're like, oh my God, thank you. You are saying what I've been thinking this whole time, and you get to help them get through what they've been thinking about for a long time because you were brave enough to share your story. So yeah, I'm just jazzed by you, Molly. Thanks. You're great.
Aw, thank you. This has been so fun. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Cool. I'm so excited. Everybody should go see this show. Out of Bounds is going to be awesome, but Molly Brenner is not coming. It's going to be a killer show. Everybody needs to go. Thank you, Molly, for taking the time. And I hope you enjoy your time in Austin. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening tonight.
Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
All right. Take care. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Yes But Why podcast.